Hi, friends. Welcome back. So, I want to have a chat with you about legal immigration, tax cuts, and tariffs. These are going to be the subjects going into next year as Trump takes the presidency and the stock market basically has to adjust. And people are thinking, okay, what can we expect? I'll try my best to address these issues and answer some comments. This is coming in one from Jessica. Jessica says, sorry, what's sad is illegals coming to the country getting more benefits than US citizens that are here legally. That's what's sad, and no one doesn't want legal immigration. Trump ready to send the illegals back, which we all want. Let the right people come in the right ways, have respectful legal immigrants that came in the process they went through, and protect them in their rights and their benefits and their jobs. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I know these are very, very sensitive topics, but I also know that a lot of people care about this issue very, very deeply. First, I want to address a question here that I have for you is, do you think that Americans want to do the jobs that illegal immigrants do, right? Or you can say a documented worker. That's the question, because the idea would be, if we kick all of these people out, who's going to do their jobs, which I think is a fair question. Let me show you what these kind of jobs are. And again, I just want to hear your guys' answers. Will Americans take up these jobs? These are the different categories. I think you already know, but I'll just kind of run through it. A lot of agricultural jobs. So about a third of egg jobs are undocumented workers. You could talk about grounds and maintenance workers, food prep, school cafeteria, hospital, food workers, these kind of things. Textile, apparel, furnishings, right? Again, these are all the kind of jobs that they do. Cooks, food preps. They work in constructions, be it the trade or the helpers in construction. So basically, preparing your food, building your houses, these kind of things. Pest control, building cleaners, those kind of jobs, and food processing workers. So these are the types of jobs that undocumented workers, or you could say illegal immigrants, do. And the question is, if we do kick out all these people, who's going to replace that workforce? Would Americans do these jobs? That's just a question. And regarding the other one, because it depends on your point of view. I said the majority of the Americans don't want to do it, but will other Americans fill those jobs? The other question I want to address is whether or not illegal immigrants, get more benefits than U.S. citizens. That's just basically false. There's no other way to put it. They're ineligible for many benefits. Now, do they receive some benefits? The answer is yes. But the question is, how do you measure said benefits? So this is actually a report from the government, which I read, and this is on the Republican side. And it depends how you want to portray the numbers. So there's a couple things you have to address. So first is, do you want to count the children with the workers? Okay. So the children receive benefits, if you want to call it that way, through public education. So they get food through these kind of things and also receive, right, public education. So you can count those benefits with the workers, but the workers don't receive that. But it sort of throws your numbers off if you can include their children with them. The other issue as well is that, which people don't talk about enough, actually undocumented workers pay a bunch of money into the tax system, right? They pay money into the system, be it through Social Security, sales tax, or any number of things, but they don't necessarily receive all of the benefits of that. So U.S. citizens actually get more benefits. Now, it is certainly true that they may receive more benefits than taxes that they put in, but that's no different. Repeat, that is no different than other Americans with similar education levels, right? So essentially, if you put two different groups of people with similar, education levels and sort of like how much they pay in taxes into the system, they're going to end up receiving similar types of benefits. And again, it depends how you want to sort of document the numbers. Are you going to include their children or not? So I hope that sort of makes sense. And I know this is a very, very sensitive topic, but I do want to address this in an honest way. The other issue as well, which I think is a very fascinating one, is, and again, something that people don't talk enough about, and this is another thing that's completely false that Elon Musk tries to put out there all the time. So Elon Musk likes to concentrate on one or two crimes that, right, someone from another country does. He'll say, oh, look at this dark person from, whatever country, look how bad they are, and, how much they're all going to hurt you. The thing is, though, is that there are higher crime rates and higher convictions among U.S. native born citizens than there are immigrants. It's just factual numbers, and you can do any kind of numbers from that. I'm just showing you a couple different things if you want to look at, coming from the Department of Justice, or I just showed you a different thing. This is like, was this a study here? NIJ. Analysis of Texas arrest records, right? Undocumented immigrants offending rate lower than U.S. born citizen rate. So depending on what you want to look at. So again, I'm fine having these conversations, but oftentimes people misrepresent things, don't have honest conversation with this stuff, and it's also a very, very sensitive topic. So I have to address that when you talk about any of this stuff, because going through these comments, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here, and then we'll get through the markets also. This is another person, the same person, or another comment from the same person, Jessica. She says, sorry, if one job is not enough, some of us have worked 2 to 3 jobs in the past. It's all about choices. Anyone could start an ETF and put $50 in a month in it. They're open to everyone as our second job, second and third jobs like the rest of us took, and save years by working hard if someone doesn't have assets they accumulate over time. So you're getting another whole ball of wax here as well, right? So I don't disagree that if you want, you can work a second and third job to make ends meet. I don't disagree, and I also understand a lot of people did that. I did that, so I completely get it. This bleeds into a separate topic, which is difficult to talk about with people if you have no experience dealing with extremely wealthy people, because essentially what happens is in the lower classes, you associate wealth with work. If I work more, therefore I'm more wealthy. I see more money coming in my paychecks. The higher you go up on the scale, the more assets you accumulate, and you will realize that sometimes, well, or many times, I guess a better way to say it, you can build wealth by actually not working at all. You literally just have a bunch of assets. Now, sometimes in this situation, or many times, how you want to say it, these assets are gains that is not done through your work. It's passed through your parents. Your parents gave you a bunch of money. Your parents gave you a business. Your parents gave you a bunch of land. And so you live off said things, right? And then you can reinvest the money or do whatever you want with it. But this idea, though, that then wealth is only by hard work is simply not true, if you guys understand what we're talking about here. Now, I'm not saying that assets are bad. In fact, I was trying to portray in the last video that assets are actually good because you increase your net worth as markets go up, as real estate values go up. You're doing great. But a lot of people don't have said things, and I'm just talking about, trying to make a fair system. Why am I showing you this? So this is something that we talked about before in Trump's presidency first time around. We have to talk about it again. But his net worth is going basically to the moon. Now he's becoming president, and I can go through all these certain deals that he's making, these kind of things, but I'll just give you gist of it. He has business entanglements all around the world, right? Be it Saudi Arabia, be it Vietnam, be it India, Abu Dhabi, wherever, right? And this goes through all these kind of things. Now, the crazy thing about Trump, they were talking about here is that because politically he's a bit unpopular in New York City, and people don't want to rent from him. And plus, to be fair, it's also not just him being unpopular. It's just commercial real estate was down, and so his occupancy rates were down, and they weren't necessarily paying the rents they needed to be paying. He has a lot of debt, and owes money to a bunch of people. And the problem was, though, is that the landlords actually couldn't sue him or do anything because it would be seen as political. Even though he owes you money, you can't really take any legal action. He'll just, go on social media and say, "Oh, they're just trying to sue me for rent because they're Democrats," right? And it's hard to have that conversation, and you don't want to enter into that arena. So there's that. The other thing too, which is interesting about Trump, is he was making a bunch of deals, and be it Elon Musk or whatever. And it was funny, and because people ask about this in the comments, is this legal to do this stuff or not? Well, it's not supposed to be, but people do things and they can get away with things however you like. And if people attack you, they call it's all political. But basically, he was saying, tell the oil companies and others, hey, give me $1 billion, I can remove all the regulations. Now, what's interesting is that we actually have campaign financing limits, and it is illegal for a politician to give a number above the limit. So if like an individual contribution limit is, I think it's like 3,300 or something in that nature, and you say, hey, give me $1 billion, I'll do something for you, that's illegal. You're not supposed to do that. If you said, hey, give me $2,000 and I'll do something for you, theoretically, is that legal or not? I guess it could be because you're under the campaign finance limit, but it's clearly egregiously illegal. You're not supposed to say said things by give me a bunch of money over a certain amount and I'll help you. Now the way that the campaigns or the way the companies do it, though, is they can contribute to your campaign through the political action committee, and that's what Musk did. And Musk was kind of really overtly involved in politics. I'm just mentioning this stuff because I want you to understand that some people get wealthy not necessarily through hard work. It's based on generational wealth passed through your parents, etc., and then also based on whatever kind of business dealings that you want to do, legal or not. So there's that. And guys, I know these are really, really sensitive topics, and there's a whole bunch to address with this, but I just wanted to address all these things as we go through the markets because it matters, because we're talking about money. The person also writes, and this is why these are long conversations, I'm sure you get. Jessica says, what you could do is encourage your audience to skill themselves, right? Why don't you go through a list of all the different jobs in the US and that what in different pay grades are, and either certificate education or maybe no education needed to get those jobs. Encourage the lower people that are struggling to grow versus getting angry with people that have been successful. So this person probably doesn't regularly watch my channel. If you follow my channel, you know I talk about job skills quite a bit. Am I angry at Trump and Musk? I'm just pointing out the truth is that people like Trump and Musk don't necessarily want to pay people like Jessica. And Jessica, you may not understand it, right? And you know, maybe you never will, but I'm actually fighting for someone like you. I really am. I'm encouraging people to watch their spending. I'm encouraging people to invest. And yes, I encourage you to get job skills. And I want you to get a fair wage. I also don't want your work to abuse you. Now, if you disagree, if you prefer your boss to abuse you, right? Prefer that your boss doesn't pay you benefits, prefer that your boss doesn't, essentially give you the rights of taking time off and having a job when you come back, be it being pregnancy or hospitalization or anything else. That's your business, but I just try to fight for workers' rights, which I think is the vast majority of the world. We get into another issue though, and this is where it gets even more complicated. I want to play a clip that I saw today and have a listen. This is regarding Elon Musk.
When a segment of people that he really spoke to that was very important was young men. Time and time again, I was on the campaign trail seeing young men coming out telling me that they were just thrilled to see this guy who they considered a hero, who they drew inspiration. At one stop in one of the Philly suburbs, I was talking to some young guys. One guy hadn't been employed since the COVID pandemic, and is talking about how he just saw Elon speak and he was just inspired, feeling like maybe he had some purpose in his life that he could go pursue. And the idea that Elon was giving young men purpose by going out and voting, that's pretty powerful.
So as this guy is saying, it was actually really interesting. The Wall Street Journal reporter saying, "Hey, I've been talking to people who support Musk, and they're like they don't have jobs, they're unemployed, and they need some inspiration, and Musk gives them that, right? Which I think is totally fine to have inspiration from your heroes." And I kind of see why people get angry when I tell them the truth. Like essentially Musk got rich because he was born rich, right? And then he continues to grow his wealth by telling people a bunch of lies and promises that he can't keep. For example, my robots work and my robots are going to all make you rich. It's just not true. Or we're going to go to Mars in a couple years and everything's going to be awesome. We're going to save humanity. I mean, it's not true. So that kind of stuff, or we're going to have a bunch of robotaxis and we're going to be rich that way. Again, not true. But that kind of stuff, if that inspires you, I guess great. But I'm not seeing how the robots are going to make you wealthier, even though Musk says they are. And then according to Musk, you give him $35,000 for the robot, and I guess you'd be rich by giving him money. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me, but there's that. And part of the issues that we're dealing with in our market and stuff like that is when people are basically making you a bunch of promises and promising you that you're going to win the lottery. And when I call that stuff out, and I'm actually agree with Jessica, I agree. You should have a good job. You should invest. And this is sort of what we talk about all the time. So, these are tough topics to address. And I just wanted to show you sort of different ways of thinking. Yeah, I know it's complicated. Here's another one. This is another comment. This has come from Not My Miles Alone. This person says, "It's all a game, a joke, and I despise. As an idealist youngster, I also ended up in the trouble, protesting and being active in the things that I believed in. Then I learned to take advantage of the game from inside. Not proud, but as you said, this is the world we live in." Yes. So, and this is where it gets complicated because I'm saying two things, right? So first, I always say, guys, you got to have a job. You got to have a job. You got to control your spending. Use that extra money to invest, and secure your future, right? Have money set aside. Many of the channels don't actually talk about those kind of things, right? Money coming in. They only sort of just talk about like, hey, winning lotteries. It's not quite the same as, holding down a job. The other issue as well is that it's not just about your work and job. You also want to take ownership in these companies around the world, or just companies in USA if you want to do S&P 500. But most of the companies in USA do business around the world and make tons of money. But you want to take ownership in that. If that's the way that our world works, take ownership in it, right? Take ownership in things that are profitable and you'll do great. Now, this is where the balance always is. And so like, for example, in the situation of Tesla or Musk, I'm not into monopolies. I don't really want that kind of stuff, or I'm not into corruption to where companies can pay government for favorable policies. I like a fair market, but I also acknowledge, guys, if your particular CEO that you're a fan of gives a politician a bunch of money to take government position and favor his company, and all the other companies fail, and you get rich. If that's the world you want to live in, fantastic. Congratulations to you. I have a different opinion on that. And it just depends what kind of world you want to live in. And when I talk about these things, I want to phrase it in a different way. What if the shoe were on the other foot? Okay, you'll know your bias if the shoe were on the other foot. So if I say, hey guys, Nancy Pelosi's getting a whole bunch of money from Nvidia, right? And then she's going to pass laws that benefit Nvidia. What do you think about that? Just think about that. Would you feel the same way about CEOs getting involved in politics? So that's how you know if you're biased or not. And full disclosure, do I ever defend Nancy Pelosi? Do I ever defend any kind of insider trading, these kind of things? No, no, I don't. And I also point out very clearly, members of Congress, I think, in my opinion, should just invest at the index 500 and not have to not be involved in trading individual stocks or their family members. But it's not just Nancy. It's there are many politicians that engage in this kind of stuff, and she's not even the quote worst of it. So people just like to hit on certain issues that sort of fit into their narrative. And if I talk about Republicans that fit into the insider trading thing, I'm thinking about when and there was four, if I remember correctly. I think there were Senate and Reps. I was thinking Loeffler was the most egregious one. I think her name was. It's Kelly Loeffler. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the names, but that was after they went to it was a commission, if I remember correctly. I think it was after the terrorist attacks, or no, it was the COVID. It was the COVID ones, and then they made trades immediately after secret congressional meetings of the COVID stuff. And again, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just speaking off the cuff here, which I know what I'm talking about. I just don't have the names in my memory right at this moment. But I'll just say it just in that situation, I think it was three Republicans and one Democrat. So again, correct me if I'm wrong. But the point I'm trying to make though is that the world is a complicated place, and there's a lot of people out there that will just make you a bunch of promises. Now, and we're going to get into the tariffs and taxes. And I know for many people, this gets to be too complicated, but I'm trying my best, guys. I'm trying my best. What's going on? Okay, so we know that tariffs are coming from Trump. And so essentially Trump's going to say, hey, I'm going to tax any goods coming in from China. Now, the bet that Trump is making is that he hopes that then China or whatever country will build factories in the USA and give Americans jobs. Because remember, the strategy is we kick out the undocumented workers, then suddenly Americans have a bunch of jobs and we're doing fantastic, right? I showed you the kind of jobs that Americans, or undocumented workers do, and I asked you, do Americans want to do said jobs? And here's one answer if whether or not those jobs are actually going to come after tariffs are raised. So Steve Madden, I think they make shoes. They're saying here, you can read the headline. It says Steve Madden to slash China sourcing by as much as 45% as Trump tariffs plan looms. So basically what it's going to turn out, what they're going to do is they're not necessarily going to build factories in USA. They're actually just not going to build them in China, because that's where the politically speaking, Trump can say, I'm tough on China. Let's bring jobs back to USA. And all the people go, oh, yeah, let's go Team USA. And I'm not against Team USA, guys. I'm not against Team USA. I'm just telling you what's real. So what's real is that according to the CEO, Edward Rosenfeld, this is the Steve Madden guy, they're looking at building factories in Cambodia, Vietnam, Mexico, and Brazil. That's what we're talking about here. Even Elon Musk himself was looking at building factories for his Tesla cars in India and Mexico. Now, whether or not that goes forward, I don't know. I don't know, what's going to go on with Tesla, but I can just tell you what they're thinking about, and what theoretically could happen. If Musk gives enough money to Trump and gets stuff in his favor, maybe he gets a bunch of tax dollars that subsidize his factories, because we do that kind of thing, be it with Intel or whatever, right? Where we say, hey, Tesla, Intel, you are, national security treasures, and we need to keep your companies in operation for national security, and we're going to give you a bunch of money, and therefore Americans will have jobs. But just understand what we're talking about here. I'm not making stuff up. I'm telling you how the world works. And I always say it is what it is, but it's people have all kinds of illusions about these things, and I just tell you what it is. Even every headline today has been the same: how Elon Musk stands to cash in on Trump's presidential victory, right? So is Trump going to remove all regulations to get his robo-taxis on the street, that kind of stuff? Who knows, right? It could totally happen, right? It's the same way that Trump told the oil people, give me a bunch of money and I'll remove all the regulations. So there's that. And we're gonna see now. Inflation's probably going to go up. That's what we're looking at with more tariffs, more tax cuts. Inflation will probably go up. The thing that's been really interesting is the Fed. They cut rates today. I'll do a separate video on the Fed. but they're kind of in a bind because we're actually also looking at it looks like unemployment's going up. I just saw Nissan's firing a bunch of people. I think it was like 20% of the work. It was like 9,000 workers. I see various cuts around. I think GM was another recent one that we saw. But their Fed is cutting, but the problem is with for them is they're cutting because okay, we need to make sure that companies are employing people. Let's keep rates low. Let's keep economic activity going. But the problem is they can't cut too much or inflation gets even worse. And they know that the tariffs are coming. Now, whether or not, Federal Jerome Powell addresses the tariffs, I don't know. I'll do a separate video on that because he's literally giving the conference right now as I'm speaking. But there's that they're gonna have to deal with, and it's really right now the markets that we're in right now are going to be really really crazy. The other issue as well is like there's real concern that Trump's going to raise the deficit spending, right? Because again, you're if you want to balance the budget, like just doing massive tax cuts isn't really going to cut it, right? Because you need more money coming in, and then if you're going to subsidize Elon Musk and you're not bringing up taxes, where's that money going to come from? So maybe they're going to end up borrowing a bunch more. Talking about the U.S. government, and so what's actually really interesting is that there's a bet now among some people. So I guess this particular person is this Yardini. I think I can't remember the name, but he was they were saying because like bond yields have been going up and the dollar's really strong. I think the bet right now in the bond market then is like, well, if we know that yields are going higher, right? If that's what we think was going to do, sell our bonds now, buy them back later, because we know Trump's going to need that money because he's not bringing in enough taxes. And then the other issue as well is that growth may not be there. Now, I want to make this really clear, and I've said this in several times in several videos, but I understand people only selectively hear what they want to hear. I just tell you the truth. There's, regardless of if it was Harris or Trump, we would have had the same kind of problems coming in. Now, the Nobel Prize winning economists were saying, yo, it looks like it would be better under Harris, but both Harris and Trump, the budgets were the same. They're still deficit. Just it would be bigger under Trump and more national debt under Trump. Now, it's irrelevant to talk about Harris at this point because we're with Trump right now, right? So that's why I'm talking going forward. But I just wanted to make sure it's really clear. We're still kind of in a downward trend, regardless of who was in office. Just that it would be worse growth under Trump and more inflation under Trump. So there's that. And so it's interesting to see what's going to happen going forward, because the other issue with on the stock market is like a lot of our companies are overvalued at the moment according to traditional metrics. Just look at your basic PE ratios. You can see it for yourself. A very simple example is Apple's like, yo, we're going to have growth of 7%. And I think the last time I checked their PE is, maybe, I don't know, around 30 or something like that. Maybe it's 25, but you guys can tell me. But point being, though, is that they just can't grow that much more, right? There's only so much more they can grow. Plus, you have slowdowns in China, which you have to address. And it's very, very difficult to fix, right? And then also too, you have the issue of like you have more competitive companies in China, like they're making more better phones. And this could be phones, it could be cars, it could be clothes, it could be food, you need everything. Like for example, food I mentioned is that Starbucks is struggling, right? So what if I'm telling you here in Korea, we don't even go to Starbucks that much anymore because we just have a lot of really great local brands, better quality, cheaper prices. Why mess with Starbucks? And it's that kind of is a story of everything. Regarding the tariff situation, we're also talking about, and I just mentioned the Korean situation. It's kind of fun. And we'll do a separate video on this. Yeji and I will talk with you guys about this. We're preparing for Trump tariffs also. What's going to happen to trade? So, all the forecasts are basically saying we're going to slow down. Now, it's not just Trump alone, right? I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not just Trump alone that we're slowing down. It's just we may have a world economy slow down because there comes a point to where you just can't find any more growth. Now, it doesn't mean that we're all going to melt down and everything's going to go bankrupt and you're all going to lose everything. It doesn't mean that. But what it does mean, though, is that it may be more difficult to find opportunity. It looks like, though, to be perfectly frank, we've had a bounce in the market the last couple of days. I think Bitcoins and your Teslas are going up, etc. And in my opinion, maybe as we go through the next couple of months, maybe take a holiday in December and forget about politics and do whatever and go home and drink whatever you're gonna drink, your eggnog and stuff like that. Maybe we'll come to more sort of realization of tariffs, tax cuts, and these kind of things after Trump takes office in January, and then we start to evaluate how does that affect companies' earnings. So if you're following the markets, this is sort of what we do all the time on the channel. Then is we look at the government says, I address questions in the community, and then you see what individual companies said, and that's why I show you something like the Steve Madden and what they're talking about with their factory. So for me, and in just an honest opinion, I don't see the factory jobs coming back to the USA. I just don't see it. Even something like in this situation with Yoon, so Trump's saying, hey, we're gonna like give tariffs on your products to your Koreans, and we want you to pay more money for the military, these kind of things, which again with something a separate video. But don't forget that Korean actually give Americans jobs with, say, building Hyundai plants in USA. So it is a complicated thing, right? And I know I just talked about Steve Madden not building, or not making shoes in USA, but there are some jobs that do come to USA, say in the Korean situation. So everyone's going to be different. That's why there's not like an easy answer for any of this stuff, and it's going to depend on what state you live in. And there's that. So I sorry I talk about so much, but I try my best to guys to give you an education, and do the best that I can. If you want any specific things, it's the same. Make sure that you are secure in your job. Okay, make sure they have good relationships in your job. Make sure that you're essentially saving more, saving more than you spend. So don't go over that, right? Try to set a goal every month that's like, what, I'm going to save at least this percentage amount a month, and lock to it. So I know a lot of these things may sound basic to you, but for some people that they just don't think in that way. They just think I make more, and all my friends make more, whatever, and I'm going to spend everything to keep up with my friends. But don't necessarily have to follow your friends. Sometimes, like, having the not so cool stuff, but cool stuff is having money in your bank, or having money in your brokerage is more cool than showing off stuff that people can see. It I know it's hard for young people to understand these things, but yeah, what can I do? Anyway, I'll try my best to address all these topics as we go forward, and I'll catch you on the next video.